Tiny Lund's heroic fire rescue, Daytona, 1963. On February 14, 1963, during speed weeks at Daytona International Speedway, driver Marvin Panch lost control of a Maserati sports car while testing for the Daytona Continental, a 250-mile sports car race. The car flipped at high speed, landed upside down, and burst into flames. Panch, trapped inside, tried to fight the fire with a handheld extinguisher but couldn't escape. Among the bystanders rushing to help was burly NASCAR driver Dwayne Tiny Lund, along with Steve Petrasic, Larry Bircher, Bill Wimble, and Ernie Stillman. Together, they braved the flames, lifted the burning wreck, and pulled Panch out. His clothing was on fire, but they smothered the flames and saved his life. Panch suffered burns and broken ribs, but survived. Lund injured his back, but escaped serious harm. Ironically, Panch had been scheduled to drive the Wood Brothers' number 21 Ford in the Daytona 500. Unable to compete, he asked the Woods to put Lund in the car. Just days later, Tiny Lund stunned the racing world by winning the 1963 Daytona 500, scoring his first and only victory in NASCAR's crown jewel. For his selfless act, Lund was awarded the Carnegie Hero Medal. His rescue of Panch, followed by his Daytona triumph, remains one of NASCAR's most legendary stories, a powerful tale of bravery, fate, and brotherhood. Dr. Punch saves Don Marmor's life, Atlanta, 1988. At the 1988 ARCA season finale at Atlanta Motor Speedway, driver Don Marmor suffered one of the most violent wrecks in series history. On lap 54, his car veered into the pit entrance area and struck a row of heavy tractor tires head-on. The impact nearly tore the car apart. Marmor was left unconscious, pinned on the steering column, with multiple broken bones in his legs, arms, ribs, and shoulder. Working pit road that day as an ESPN reporter, trauma-trained physician Dr. Jerry Punch immediately grabbed his medical bag and sprinted to the scene. Reaching the mangled car even before some of the track's rescue workers, Punch forced his way into the wreckage, established an airway, and stabilized Marmor's breathing. His quick actions kept the driver alive long enough for safety crews to cut him free and load him onto a helicopter bound for a nearby hospital. Against long odds, Marmor survived, though his racing career was over. Doctors credited Punch's emergency care as the difference between life and death. The incident added to Punch's reputation in motorsports. He had already been involved in saving drivers' lives, including resuscitating Rusty Wallace after a 1988 Talladega crash. Marmor's survival stands as a reminder of both the dangers of racing in that era and the life-saving impact of having a skilled physician in the right place at the right time. Michael Waltrip's car torn in half, Bristol, 1990. On April 7, 1990, during a Busch Series race at Bristol Motor Speedway, Michael Waltrip survived one of the most shocking crashes in NASCAR history. Driving the number 30 Pontiac, Waltrip lost control in turn 2 and slammed directly into the end of an unguarded crossover gate in the outside wall. The blunt impact ripped the car apart, shearing off the entire front half in an instant. Debris scattered across the track, and another competitor piled into the wreckage, compounding the chaos. As silence fell over the speedway, many feared the worst. Incredibly, Waltrip was sitting upright in what remained of the cockpit, completely conscious. His feet were literally visible through the destroyed chassis, yet he had suffered only cuts and bruises. When safety workers rushed to his aid, Waltrip quipped, "I'm fine. What's wrong with y'all?" leaving rescuers stunned that he was even alive. That evening, Waltrip admitted he didn't realize how horrific the crash looked until he saw the replay on TV. The wreck led NASCAR and track officials to redesign and reinforce crossover gates at Bristol and elsewhere to prevent similar accidents. Waltrip would later win races at Bristol, but the enduring image of his car torn clean in half, with him walking away unscathed, remains one of the sport's most miraculous escapes. Ernie Irvan's near-death crash and comeback, Michigan, 1994. On August 20th, 1994, NASCAR was jolted by a reminder of how fragile life in racing can be. During a practice session at Michigan International Speedway, Ernie Irvan, a rising star and 1991 Daytona 500 champion, suffered a right front tire failure. His Ford slammed nearly head-on into the turn 2 wall at around 170 miles per hour. The impact left Irvan with massive head and chest injuries, including a basilar skull fracture, severe brain trauma, and collapsed lungs. When safety crews arrived, he was unresponsive and barely breathing. Emergency workers intubated him, performed trackside CPR, and rushed him by helicopter to St. Joseph Mercy Hospital in Ann Arbor, where doctors gave him only a 10% chance of surviving the first night. Against the odds, Irvan pulled through. After days in a coma, he regained consciousness and began a painstaking recovery that captured the entire NASCAR community's support. Just 13 months later, in September 1995 at North Wilkesboro, Irvan made an emotional return to cup racing, and in August 1997, he scored a triumphant win at Michigan, the very track that nearly killed him. Irvan's ordeal underscored NASCAR's urgent need for improved head protection, trauma response, and restraint systems, paving the way for broader acceptance of closed-face face helmets, enhanced medical protocols, and eventually the Hans device. Irvan himself became an outspoken advocate for safety. His 1994 Michigan crash remains one of NASCAR's most miraculous survival stories. A driver given almost no chance to live who not only survived but returned to win again. Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s wild flip and the Earnhardt Bar, Talladega, 1996. On July 28, 1996, during the Die Hard 500 at Talladega Superspeedway, Dale Earnhardt Sr. endured one of the most violent crashes of his legendary career. On lap 117, Earnhardt's black number 3 Chevrolet was clipped in traffic, sending it head-on into the tri-oval wall before being launched into the air. The car tumbled end over end and barrel rolled across the front stretch in a massive multi-car wreck. Parts flew as the car shed sheet metal and suspension before finally coming to rest upright, mangled almost beyond recognition. For a tense moment, Earnhardt sat motionless as safety crews rushed in. Then, to a roar from the crowd, the Intimidator climbed out under his own power, miraculously alive. He wasn't unscathed. Doctors diagnosed him with a broken collarbone and sternum. In typical Earnhardt fashion, he refused to sit out, returning the very next week at Indianapolis, with relief drivers subbing mid-race until he could finish. The wreck had lasting consequences. Video showed the roof of Earnhardt's car collapsing during the rolls, prompting NASCAR to require a reinforced roof support bar across the windshield, quickly dubbed the Earnhardt Bar. By the end of 1996, the upgrade was mandatory, improving roll cage integrity and driver survival space. Fans marveled at Earnhardt's toughness, joking with medics afterward as though he hadn't just survived a crash that looked fatal. The irony remains poignant. He survived this horrifying Talladega wreck that inspired new safety standards, only to lose his life 5 years later in a seemingly routine Daytona crash. The 1996 Talladega flip reinforced his legend and made NASCAR cars safer for every driver who followed. Geoff Bodine's truck obliterated in flames, Daytona 2000. The NASCAR Truck Series opener at Daytona on February 18, 2000 produced one of the most terrifying crashes in stock car history. On the backstretch of the Daytona 250, a push drafting attempt went wrong, triggering a massive multi-truck wreck. Geoff Bodine, a 1986 Daytona 500 winner running the number 15 Ford, was clipped and shot into the catch fence at nearly 190 miles per hour. What followed was chaos. Bodine's truck disintegrated in midair, erupting into flames as it somersaulted down the track. The engine block was torn free and landed in the infield grass. Wheels and suspension scattered like shrapnel. The ruptured fuel tank sprayed fire along the fence, and debris showered into the grandstands, where 5 spectators were injured, none seriously. When the twisted roll cage cell finally skidded to a halt, safety workers braced for the worst. To their shock, Bodine was alive, even conscious and moving. He suffered a broken wrist, broken ankle, fractured vertebra, and a concussion, but no life-threatening trauma. Strapped to a stretcher, Bodine raised a thumbs up to the crowd, proving he had somehow survived. "I've never had a wreck like that in my life. I just went on a wild ride," he said later from his hospital bed. Incredibly, Bodine returned to competition later that same year. The crash, compared by some to Bobby Allison's 1987 Talladega wreck, reignited debates about speed and safety. It also accelerated improvements in catch fence design, fuel cell integrity, and truck chassis construction. Bodine's fiery Daytona wreck remains a chilling but celebrated testament to NASCAR safety. A crash that looked unsalvageable, survived by a driver tough enough to give a thumbs up as he was carried away. Mike Harmon's miraculous escape from a halved car, Bristol, 2002. On August 16, 2002, during practice for a Busch Series race at Bristol Motor Speedway, Mike Harmon endured one of the most terrifying wrecks ever seen at the half mile. Driving the number 24 Chevrolet, Harmon lost control in turn 2 and slammed directly into an unsecured crossover gate. The blunt edge of the concrete opening acted like a can opener, slicing his car clean in half. The front half, with the engine, skidded across the track and was struck violently by Johnny Sauter, while the rear half, with Harmon still strapped in, spun to a stop on the apron. The grandstands fell silent as crews rushed to the wreck, fearing the worst. Incredibly, Harmon dropped his window net and climbed out under his own power. He escaped with bruises but no broken bones, a miracle given the violence of the impact. Adding to the surreal moment, Michael Waltrip, who had survived an eerily similar Bristol wreck in 1990 at the same crossover gate, walked over to check on Harmon. The two shared a relieved laugh, though other drivers were furious. Jeff Gordon blasted officials, saying an unbolted gate could have cost a guy his life. Mike Harmon is a lucky guy. Track management admitted fault and immediately reinforced the wall, permanently closing that gate after the incident. Harmon later reflected, "I realized I was getting real close to the wall with my body. I just looked at the car and said, I'm just glad I survived. The sight of Harmon's car torn in two, with him walking away, remains one of NASCAR's most jaw-dropping survival stories, a testament to roll cage strength and the lessons learned from preventable track design flaws. A father's daring track rescue, South Boston, 2018. On June 16, 2018, Father's Day weekend, a NASCAR-sanctioned late-model stock car race at South Boston Speedway, Virginia, produced one of the most unforgettable rescues in recent memory. On lap 16, Mike Jones crashed hard into the wall, rupturing his fuel cell. Flames immediately engulfed his car as it sat in the middle of the track. While safety crews rushed to respond, one man had already decided he couldn't wait: Mike's father, Dean Jones. From the pit area, Dean vaulted the wall in shorts and a t-shirt, sprinting across the still-hot racing surface toward the fireball. In a moment caught on viral video, he reached his son's blazing car, tore down the window net, and yanked Mike out with sheer parental determination. The two stumbled away together just as fire crews arrived. Mike later called it a driver's worst nightmare to be trapped in a burning car. Officials, however, were less impressed. Dean had violated track safety protocol by entering an active track. He was placed on probation, but among fans and the wider public, Dean Jones was hailed as a hero. "I'd do it again," he said bluntly afterward. The daring rescue underscored both the ever-present danger of racing fires and the power of instinctive love. On Father's Day weekend, Mike Jones walked away with only minor injuries, thanks to his dad's fearless leap into the flames. Austin Dillon's airborne fence crash, Daytona, 2015. The 2015 Coke 0400 at Daytona ended after midnight on July 6, 2015, with a crash so violent it froze fans and drivers alike. As the pack thundered to the checkered flag, contact sent Austin Dillon's number 3 Chevrolet Airborne at nearly 190 miles per hour. The car sailed into the catchfence cockpit first, tearing apart in a shower of sparks and flames. The engine, front suspension, and hood were ripped away by the steel cables, which themselves snapped and sprayed debris. Several fans were injured, fortunately, none critically. What remained of Dillon's car, little more than a mangled roll cage, landed upside down on the track and was then clipped at speed by Brad Keselowski's Ford. For a moment, Daytona fell into stunned silence. In a remarkable scene, crew members from rival teams, including Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s pit crew, sprinted onto the track, waving frantically for medics. Then, a hand emerged from the wreckage. To everyone's relief, Dillon climbed out under his own power, raising a thumbs up to the crowd. His only injuries were a bruised tailbone and forearm. Dillon later admitted he didn't realize how terrifying the crash looked until he saw the replays. His survival was credited to modern safety upgrades: energy-absorbing seats, 6-point harnesses, safer barriers, and reinforced roll cages. The wreck prompted NASCAR to re-examine catch fence design and debris fencing. The fact that Dillon could walk away from a crash that destroyed the number 3 car, the same number Dale Earnhardt made famous, underscored just how far NASCAR safety had come since 2001. The 2015 Daytona finish remains one of the most dramatic and miraculous endings in the sport's history. Ryan Newman's last lap miracle escape, Daytona, 2020. The finish of the 2020 Daytona 500 produced one of the most harrowing and unforgettable moments in NASCAR history. Battling for the win on the final lap, Ryan Newman's number 6 Ford Mustang was tapped, sending him into the wall at nearly 200 miles per hour. His car lifted into the air, flipped, and was then struck driver's side at full speed by Corey LaJoie's Ford, an impact so violent it tore apart the roll cage and sent Newman skidding upside down in flames across the trioval. Safety crews rushed in immediately. Firefighters reached the car in 19 seconds, and a paramedic was inside the cockpit in 35 seconds, despite fuel spilling onto the track. For nearly 10 minutes, fans and fellow drivers watched in silence as black screens were deployed around the wreck. Fears of tragedy loomed until Newman was finally extricated and rushed to Halifax Medical Center in serious condition. The racing world braced for the worst. Then, in a miraculous turn, just 2 days later, Newman walked out of the hospital holding his daughter's hands. He had no broken bones and no internal organ damage, only a serious head injury. "I feel like a walking miracle," Newman said, crediting the safety crew, the car's reinforced cockpit, and his new carbon fiber helmet for saving his life. The crash, called by many the worst in decades, prompted NASCAR to mandate further roll cage and window net reinforcements within months. Newman's survival wasn't just a personal miracle, it was proof of how far NASCAR safety had come since the dark day of 2001, and a reminder that even at Daytona's most dangerous speeds, lives can still be saved. Do you think NASCAR safety owes more to brave individuals like these, or to modern technology? Let us know your take in the comments below, and thank you for watching the NASCAR Explainer.